Alright, a very warm welcome back everyone. Today I want to talk about slash chords and their application in one particular example, in this case a reharmonization arrangement I did from Moon River. But let me first break down what slash chords actually are. So if you are playing your chords like this, you have, for example, in this case the C major triad, you know that these triads usually have 3 notes, right? Now if you only play chords like this, then you probably run into the problem that your arrangements will not sound that natural or full, just because you are very limited in the way that you can play these chords. You will always have the root of the chord you are talking at in the bass. In the bass would mean as the lowest note in your chord, and on the other hand, you have some very large switches if you go, for example, from D minor 7 to G7 to C, right? You can also do this like this. And this is one of these slash chords, right? So you have the G7 chord, but with a different bass note than the root of the G7 chord, so than the G. And the reason how they are written and why they are called slash chords is basically because you indicate which note you have in the bass by putting a slash after the chord. So if I'm just playing this C major triad again, this is the C, of course, C major triad. I can also move my my tummy to the E here, or not move my tummy, but make the E to the bass note, and also I can do this for the G and make the G to the bass note. And you can see that they are indicated by this slash after the chord you are talking about, and then you indicate the bass note for this chord, right? Now it doesn't stop with these 3 notes, because you know that there are also chords that have multiple notes or more notes than 3 notes. In this case, for example, C major 7 I played just before, and of course any of these notes can be moved into the bass. This is the very easy version, so you can choose any of the notes, or the notes that are present in a chord as the bass note of this chord. But of course you can also use any other note that is not diatonic in the chord and use this as a bass note. However, this might not sound that good in comparison to what you had before. However, you can make this sound good if you are if you know something about music theory, and then you can move these things in a way and glue these things together in a way that sounds very natural and very good. So for this purpose, I've loaded up a Moon River arrangement here, and we are going to talk about this arrangement and the reason why I chose the chords and what function they do have, and also we see some of these slash chords in there, so I think this makes up for a really good example in this case. You can also always see the chords that I played on this keyboard here. Cubase does this very nicely, so let me just play this back. I'm commenting this, but mostly you should listen to the song here. Okay, so for the first bars already, you see that you have some sort of movement in the bass line of this song, right? So you start with the C here, then you move to B, A, then you have A with G in the bass, F, and E, and then you have the F again and the C. So what this essentially means is that you are moving the C major scale, we are in C major here, down from the C up, from C down to E, and every single note that you are going to play is the bass note for any of these chords that you are seeing here. So C major 7, in this case with the ninth extension, this here is a very classic chord when you're talking about jazz. And then you have a passing chord in this case, which is B fully diminished. So this is what it would look like. So you have B as the root, then you have like the diminished triad, and then you have a minor third on top of this as a passing chord, as I mentioned, and then you move to the A minor 7. And from this A minor 7, you take the 7 here, the G, from A minor, and move this into the bass, which gets you to the A minor 7 with G in the bass, or as it also sometimes read, A minor 7 on G, right? And then you move to the F major 7, which is basically the classic extension. If you want to go from A minor to F, you would most likely leave the A minor as it is and then just add the F in the bass, so to say. So essentially this could also be read as A minor with F in the bass, but you would usually find this as F major 7. Then you go to E minor 7 11, this one here. So basically E minor 7 with the A here, which is the 11 or the 4 from E, right? So this is why it's called E minor 7 11. Essentially you could also add the 9 here as well, but in this case let's talk about this E minor 7 11 like this, sorry. Then you move back to your F major and to C. Now comes what is actually the essential part of what is also done in the classic arrangement, namely a minor 2-5-1, but not with the A minor major 7 here, but with the A minor 7 in fact. So this is B half diminished. Then you would usually go to E7 as we are talking talking about A minor a harmonic minor, sorry, and then you would move to A minor. But in this case, to make it a little bit more interesting, to create a little bit more tension, I did not just choose B half diminished E7 A minor, but I went for B half diminished and then did some tension working with the E7. So you have E7 with the flat 9, which is this here, the F. Then you, no, not essentially it is the F here, but probably from a musical perspective this would not be the F, but a different chord which is enharmonically the same. Then you go from E7 flat 9 to E7 9, which is this one with the F sharp here, and then you move like I want to get to the A minor eventually. So what I'm doing is just choose the note, or basically the third of E, so this G sharp here, as a passing chord for, or as a passing bass note for the E7. So I get the E7 with G sharp in the bass, and then I can freely move to my A minor 7, right? And now the next thing that happens is basically a 2-5-1 in F major, right? So you have the 2 in F, which is the G minor 7, this one here. Then you have the 1, not the 1, the 5 in F, which is the C7. And then you have like the 1, of course, which is F major. Now the thing that happened here is, first we have not a 2-5-1 as you would expect it to be with the 2 with 2 in the bass, the 5 with 5 in the bass, or with the root in the bass, and then the root with of course the F in the bass. But I switched this up and went from G minor 7 to C7 with G in the bass, and then wanted to resolve this to F major. But in this case, as you see, we have a whole step between the G and the F here. So why not utilize this and make another passing chord which utilizes this F sharp in the bass, right? And this is why I came up with G minor 7, C7 with G in the bass, and then you just move the G here to F sharp, which creates another chord. In this case, it's a F sharp 7 flat 5, not sharp 11 as it's written here, so this one here, because this is F sharp 7, and this here is the 5. The C sharp is the 5 from F sharp, and if you're lowering this, you get the flat 5, right? So this would be F sharp 7 with flat 5 and not with the sharp 11, because this would usually assume that you have the 5 also there, but in this case it isn't there in the real arrangement. And then you go to F major 7. Now let me just resolve this. And what you now do is basically modulate to E flat major. So in this case you have F major 7 with the 9, then you resolve this to F6 9, and then you go to E flat with F in the bass, which is this one here. So you have essentially E flat 9, which is this one. So E flat 7 with the 9, right? This is this one, and then you move the F here in the bass, so which means that the E flat gets here, the F gets down here, and what you get is this one if you just omit the 7th here, right? This is E flat with F in the bass. And then you have, as we are now in E flat major, I want to go to the 5 of E flat, which is the B flat here. So this is then basically E flat with F in the bass to the 5 of E flat, which is B flat 7, and then move down one half step to the A minor, and then we do a bass transition from A minor to A minor major 7 with G sharp in the bass, and this is essentially actually the G sharp because we are talking about the major 7. Then you have the classic E minor 7 with G in the bass, and then you have F sharp half diminished, which is this one. So basically just move the bass note around while keeping the A minor 7 on top. And as we are there, what happens here is you have the F sharp F sharp half diminished, and now you know that the B7 chord has the F sharp in it as well. So why not utilize this and just keep the F sharp as a bass note and just play a B7 chord with F sharp in the bass, and then resolve this back to the B7 chord. So basically just like a delayed transition, so to say, and then you move from this B7 chord, you move to E7, which is basically just the fourth apart, and then another fourth apart would be the A7, which is then here introduced as A7 with flat 5. And what happens here is basically just a transition again from D minor to C, which is again 2-5-1, 2-5-1. In this case with as a G7 augmented, so this would be G7, then G7 5 plus, and then you have the C major 7 again. And what happens here is basically what we had before, namely the B fully diminished, but in this case I just moved from this chord here, which is B fully diminished, to E7 with B in the bass, so E flat on B, E7 on B, sorry, this one. And the only thing that differs between the B fully diminished and the E7 with B in the bass is just the F that is removed and the E that goes in there, right? So we have quite a nice transition back to the start, but with a different chord here. And here, this is basically delayed 2-5-1s or unresolved 2-5-1s if you wish. And they are not really 2-5-1s because you see that we are not playing a fully minor chord, so to say, but we are playing half diminished chords here, just to create more tension. So you would have not the E minor 7, but you would have the E minor 7 flat 5, so in this case E half diminished. Then you have not A7, but again A7 flat 5, again to create tension. Then you have not D minor 7, but D minor 7 with flat 5. And then you have a G7 sus derivative. So basically you want to resolve back to G7, but in order to make it more interesting, you just do not use G7, but you would use some sort of suspended G7, in this case, for example, G7 sus 4. And this D minor 7 with G in the bass would be a good fit for that because it is often substituted for a G7 sus chord. So this is with some notes left out, D minor 7 with G in the bass, also could be the 11, D minor 7 11 with G in the bass. So if I'm going to break this down, this would be D minor, this would be D minor 7. If I'm now moving the G in the bass, I would have the G in my chord additionally, right? So this here would be D minor 7 with the 11 extension, because the 11, so this G here, is the 4 of D, right? Now, if I'm moving this G in the bass and reorient the other notes as well, this is essentially what I would come up with. But in order to make it a little bit more interesting, again, I chose this chord. So not the A, but went for the B here. Okay, and then we can freely see that there is the G7 sus 4 in here, which is basically the D minor 7 on G without the B in this case, and you can use this in order to resolve back. So D minor 7 with G in the bass, G7, and then you have again a bass transition from G to A, from G over G sharp to A, so like so, which is this here, And now the same thing happens as before. However, we are resolving this to F7 and not what we did before. And now something happens with the bass again. So we move from F to E, from F to E to F, and so on. This is a tritone substitution. I'm talking about this in just a second. Modal interchange. Okay, so let me just quickly move back here. So here you see, first thing you see is that we have the explicit behavior of D minor 7 with G in the bass resolving back to G7 or G7 sus first. So D minor 7 with G in the bass, G7 sus, explicit resolving back to the G7, and then you have the C major 7. Then you have some sort of modal interchange again with the B flat 7. And then you have C major 7 again. But this one here, this tritone substitution, is a tritone substitution for the G7. So we want, essentially, we want to get from C to G back to C, but this is very boring. So in order to switch things up a little bit, I went for the tritone substitution, which is the flat second step of the G scale and dominant 7, or in this case the major 7th chord built on top of this, right? So G would have the notes G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. And now I built a dominant 7th chord. Essentially, this is what a tritone substitution would be, but I switched this up to making a major 7th chord out of this. I built a dominant 7th chord on this step here, which is the A flat, right? The flat second step of G7. I made a video about this already, so please feel free to check this out. And this resolves very nicely back to the G, which is done here, but with some sort of passing before we do this, and then we can resolve this as the dominant from C7, from C major back to C major again, right? And this is what happens here. Yeah, and this basically concludes how you can work with all of these bass notes, because of course the chords that are played here can also be utilized as chords with different bass notes, thinking of a different root position. But in this case you see that this actually allows for some very nice passing chords on the one hand, but also some very nice character when you are talking about reharmonizing some of your music. And this is what I came up with. I think this is a very good example for utilizing these slash chords, and I'm going to see you in the next one.